Okay, today we're going to be intellectual detectives. We're stepping right into the world of the Talmud to solve this really ancient mystery. We'll follow the clues, just like the rabbis did. And we're going to discover how a super simple question like, which hand do I use, can actually unlock this hidden architecture inside a sacred text.
So here it is. This is our central mystery. You've got an ancient priest, a sacred ritual, and this one very specific rule. He has to use his right hand. But here's the problem. The thing that stumped scholars for generations. The original text, it doesn't seem to say that at all. So where on earth did this rule come from?
All right, our investigation kicks off with this really clear-cut rule from the Mishnah, which is, a foundational text of Jewish law. And it's totally unambiguous. If the priest scoops the offering with his left hand, the whole ceremony is invalid. Done. So the Mishnah gives us the what, but it totally leaves out the why. And that is where our detective story really begins. So you go back to the source text, right? You look in Leviticus, and it's completely silent on this. It just says, the priest filled his hand. But which hand? Right? Left? The text just doesn't say. And that ambiguity, that's our locked door. The rabbis, they needed to find the key. So our first real lead comes from a scholar, a guy named Rabbi Zira, and he finds a clue in a totally unexpected place, the ritual for purifying a leper. Okay, check out Rabbi Zira's logic here. It's pretty clever. He compares these two verses, and he spots a key difference. For the leper's ritual, the Torah goes out of its way to say left hand. So he argues that has to be significant, right? If the text has to spell out left in this one case, it must mean that any other time it just says hand, the unstated default has got to be the right hand. I mean, it's a simple and pretty elegant solution. The generic word hand just defaults to the right, all because the text bothers to specify when it means the left. Case closed, right? Well, in the world of Talmudic debate, no theory ever goes unchallenged. And sure enough, Rabbi Zira's theory is immediately put under the microscope. Other scholars start poking holes in his argument, and they do it fast. So the first objection is a really powerful one. They basically say, whoa, hold on. You can't just borrow a detail from one law to prove a totally different one. That verse specifying the left hand, it's there to teach us about the leper's ritual, period. How can you possibly claim it's also teaching a general rule for the entire Torah? And then the challengers, they dig even deeper, attacking the very core of his argument. They're like, so what if there's an extra word? Why does one specific mention of left hand automatically make right hand the universal default? That's a huge logical leap, and they are definitely not convinced. Then they just completely flip the logic on its head. Hey, they argue, maybe the mention of left here is supposed to set a precedent. Maybe the default hand for all rituals should actually be the left one. And just like that, Rabbi Zira's neat little solution turns into a total confusing mess. And this is where we get to the real core of the problem. See, the passage about the leper is way more complex than it looks. The phrase left hand doesn't just show up once. It shows up 4 separate times. And Rabbi Zira's simple theory, it just can't account for all that data. His clue, as good as it was, has led straight to a dead end. So just when the case seems to have gone completely cold, another scholar, a master detective named Rava, enters the scene. And what's brilliant is that he doesn't even try to fix Rabbi Zira's theory. Instead, he offers a completely new way of looking at the evidence. It's a true paradigm shift. Okay, so Rava's genius is this. At first, he completely ignores the left-hand part and looks at other words in that same passage. He notices the text also specifies the right hand, the right foot, and the right ear. Now, this seems totally redundant. I mean, other verses already establish that these rituals happen on the right side. So he asks the absolute killer question, why are these extra words even here? And here it is, his radical idea. He says, look, these extra words, they aren't a mistake. They're totally intentional. They're like a kind of textual source code that's been planted in this one passage. And their whole purpose is to act as a key, connecting to other totally unrelated laws through a technique called a verbal analogy. It's where a shared word creates this incredibly powerful link. And now, we get to the grand reveal. Because Rava's theory doesn't just solve our one mystery about the meal offering. Nope. With a single insight, he solves 3 long-standing puzzles all at once. So here's how his amazing solution works. You see that extra right hand in the leper text?
Well, that links directly to the ambiguous hand of our meal offering, proving it's the right one. And the extra right foot, that connects to a whole other law about removing a shoe, a ritual called halitza. And finally, the extra right ear. That solves a question about the law of a Hebrew slave. 3 different mysteries, all unlocked by one single key.
I mean, this is the big aha moment. A bunch of words that seemed totally pointless and repetitive are suddenly revealed to be the linchpin holding 3 completely different areas of law together. It is an incredibly efficient, incredibly elegant solution that resolves all the textual problems at once. Case closed. For real this.
So, what does this whole intellectual journey, this detective story, really tell us? Well, it's about way more than just which hand a priest uses. It's about a unique and powerful way of seeing the entire world through a text.
What we've just seen is the absolute core of Talmudic logic in action. It's a whole system of thought built on this fundamental belief that not a single word in the sacred text is wasted. Every letter is precise, every single phrase is intentional, and the entire text forms this one giant, interconnected web, almost like a hyperlink system, where clues in one section can unlock mysteries in a completely different one.
So you see, in the end, this whole exercise wasn't just about figuring out which hand to use. It was really an act of revelation. For these scholars, the real goal wasn't just to prove the rule. It was to show this profound, interconnected logic that's woven into the very fabric of the scripture itself. They weren't just finding laws. They felt they were mapping a divine architecture.
And that leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought. This ancient way of reading, it really invites us to look closer at any foundational text we think we know, whether it's legal, literary, or even scientific, and to just ask ourselves, what if there are no wasted words? What hidden connections and deeper structures are lying just beneath the surface, waiting for a detective like Rava to come along and find the key?